you get disconnected, you can go over to YouTube, search Hospitable, and I'm sure you'll find us in the live tab there. We're so excited today to have Tabitha Wild join us from Key Data. Hello, Tabitha. Give us a little wave.
Hi, everyone. Thank you guys for having me.
Awesome. Great to have you. And so today we're kind of going through a bit of an overview of the US market data, some of the dynamics that's happening in the market. I'm sure Tabitha is going to give a bit of an introduction and kind of talk through a bit of an agenda. But we'll start off with some updates from Tabitha. She's going to go through some slides, present some data, kind of give us some learnings there and strategies to react to that. And then we'll move into the audience Q&A. So if you have questions, you can use the Q&A functionality at the bottom of the screen. I'm going to try my best to keep an eye on that and try and answer any questions that I can answer. Otherwise, we'll present them to Tabitha at the end of the session. And of course, towards the end of the session, you can come on stage to ask your question as well if you'd like. You can use the React button at the bottom. If you click that and then raise your hand, you'll be able to show us that you're interested in coming on stage to ask your questions. So with that's my spiel out of the way. Tabitha, I'm going to hand it over to you to start your presentation.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Miles. Thank you guys all for being here. I know it's an evening for most of you, so I really appreciate it. I am a business development manager at Key Data. I've been here for a little over 2 years, and I live in Bend, Oregon. So definitely I fit every single stereotype for Central Oregon. Big outdoors gal, and have a huge passion for travel. So that's what brought me to the industry, and I have learned so much in the last 2 years. So I'm excited to report those trends to you guys. And what we decided to focus on today was US market trends and then expected trends as we're heading into the rest of these summer months. So going over our agenda, we're going to look at property performance. So this includes a range of different key performance indicators or metrics like occupancy, rates, and then how revenues are changing region by region in the US. And then we're also going to look at different types of strategies that we can use for responding to these different trends that we're seeing. So just a little bit about Key Data. I know we've got some of you guys that use us, some that don't. I just wanted to kind of explain who we are and, why you should listen to this webinar and why we have, that reputation within the industry talking about data. So we directly source our data from over 60 different property management systems, including Hospitable. And so all of our data is able to sort between revenue generating nights and non-revenue generating nights. And those non-revenue generating nights are like maintenance holds or when an owner stays in the property. So when you're looking at your data and the markets, it's all what is actually on the books and revenue is generated. The reason I mentioned that is because all the data we're looking at today is going to be direct source data. It's all aggregated daily in real time. And then those KPIs and visualizations we'll look at are instantly updated. So all the data we're looking at, we actually pulled on the 16th so that we could get this webinar ready in time. But again, that's where the data is coming from. So heading just right into it, looking at this graph. So right now we're looking at the first half of the year. We can better understand the relationship between supply and demand in the US. If you look on the y-axis, you'll see year-over-year change. And then the x-axis displays different key performance indicators or metrics that we want to measure. So properties, guest check-ins per property, average stay length, guest nights per property, ADR, and revenue per property. So overall, what we're seeing across the US is that supply and guest check-ins have increased, but not at the same rate. So since supply grew quicker, the US short-term rental market experienced a negative guest check-in per property. And also just a note, guest check-in per property is just another way of saying occupancy. So this imbalance requires property managers like yourselves to really check your market supply and then strategize accordingly. So this is especially true in markets where you're seeing an increase in demand, but your RevPAR is down. And we'll touch on RevPAR more in a little bit. Trust me, you'll get sick of me saying RevPAR. So here, looking across the US for the first half of the year, all regions are seeing stronger supply growth than demand growth. So take a moment, find which region you're in. This is a theme you'll see, but Hawaii is laying relatively flat in terms of supply with a decline in demand growth. So you'll notice this is a theme, like I said, throughout the webinar, as Hawaii is still recovering from last year's fires and then dealing with several short-term rental regulation issues. The Midwest states' supply grew by 11%, New England and the Rocky Mountain Territory by 4%, Southwest US by 6%, and Western US by 8%. So those guest check-in rates stayed between 1% and 2% all across the board, again, except for Hawaii. And this imbalance is what leads to a decreased occupancy. So with that being said, let's dive into occupancy a little bit more. Looking at booked nights as of June 16th in the US, the short-term rental market is pacing down as a whole. In the peach, the 65% you see is the final guest check-ins from 2023, and that's an indicator of where we need to grow this year to pace alongside last year's results. This May finished down compared to 2023 May, and June and July are also pacing down year over year. And then if you look towards the right side of that graph, trends start to flatten out and look a little bit more hopeful in August and heading into the fall months, looking slightly up to those 2023 actuals we saw at the end of last year. So again, take a moment here to find your region as we dive into occupancy by location. The Midwest is doing better than 2023, being the only region that is pacing up for summer. Hawaii is still struggling to rebound from last year. Again, those fires and regulations. And we'll get into best practices later, but it's important to note here that keeping an eye on your competition and then tracking their occupancy versus your own occupancy is going to be vital to understand your performance versus theirs. This can look a little overwhelming. But overall, this is a great example of why you should be adjusting your rates based on demand. So last July, Taylor Swift's Eras Tour came to Denver, attracting people from all over who were looking for short-term stays. Denver particularly reacted to the strong occupancy, which is, if you look at the graph, indicated by the red line in the bottom right graph, and generated very high rates, the red line in the bottom left graph. So we all know that tour is not returning to Denver this year. So Denver returned to ADRs more in line with the rest of the month and appropriate for the occupancy that weekend. Instead, now they're seeing demand generate from the Fan Expo. So that's, what was it? I think it's like a 3-day event, family-friendly attractions, world-renowned celebrities come. It's kind of like a Comic-Con, but in Denver. So that demand generated from the Fan Expo, concerts, so forth, that holiday weekend, now they can capitalize on that as well. So as a result, July 2024 RevPAR is only pacing down 1% to 2023, which is pretty incredible. So again, that was keeping a look at demand in the market, shifts, forecasting trends. So with that being said, it's super important to be aware of demand opportunities in your market so you know when to capitalize on certain events like the Eras Tour or the Fan Expo in Denver. Now moving on from occupancy, we're going to look at average daily rates. So looking at ADR by market across the globe, we're just going to expand it a little bit outside the US. But the US and North America had lower rates in 2023 than 2022. But rates are still higher than 2021. Also keep in mind, when I say North America, I'm actually including Canada in there because we just want to include all that data as well. Europe was able to maintain a rate increase from 2022 to 23, even with a large jump from 2021 to 2022. Also, if you note on this graph that the US ADRs are the highest globally year after year. Looking at ADR in the US this year, ADRs are pacing flat to 2023. ADRs were down for the first half of the year and are on pace to go up in the second half. So again, very similar to 2023 trends, but keep in mind, rates will come down as we move through the booking window and rates ultimately lower to catch those last minute bookings. So don't be alarmed if you see ADRs lower in your market. Diving a little bit deeper into the summer rates, We're seeing the same trends across the US, again, except for Hawaii, with a -7% year-over-year change. So everywhere else is experiencing slight rate increases for the summer months, especially with New England with a 7% year-over-year change, which makes sense as they're a very seasonal business and capture a majority of their revenue in those summer months. The Rocky Mountain states are at 5%, followed by the Western US. Overall, this is just another example of why understanding your local market and tracking those local rates is important, especially when you break down the market by property type, unit location, amenities, all of that. And now our favorite metric that if you're on any webinar with Key Data, if you talk to anybody at Key Data, we talk about RevPAR. So revenue or RevPAR is revenue per available rental unit and is a metric our revenue managers use to track revenue performance changes over time, regardless of any inventory changes. So it's a great way to make sure your occupancy and rates are completely balanced. It's a little tricky to read, but the blue line indicates what's on the books for 2024. The red line was 2023 on the books, and the peach indicates 2023 final numbers. So in the US and North America, including Canada, 2023 RevPAR is lower than 2022 due to decreased rates and occupancy. And then looking at summer pacing, June and July are pacing down to last year. For all of you to make the most of the rest of summer, it's again important to balance occupancy and rates with opportunities in your market throughout those peak and those shoulder seasons. And understanding your RevPAR will help you be able to develop that strategy in advance. Looking again at summer RevPAR, find your region. Most regions are seeing occupancy decrease and ADR increase, which results in a mixed bag of positive or negative RevPARs. Keep in mind we're looking at summer, so this is all pacing data as of June 16th, and we can and will adjust as bookings come in. The most important takeaway here is that revenue reflects the balance of supply and demand. So by understanding your RevPAR, you can better plan your revenue management strategy and prepare for the upcoming months. Another big one is owner communications. So communicating all these trends we've talked about, but specific to your market, are super important for all of you property managers who are on this webinar. So if, especially since many units you're managing are likely fluctuating in revenue season to season, you want to be able to communicate this to owners. So for instance, showing them how their property is pacing directly against the market, how their property is performing this year versus last year, and then communicating strategies you're putting in place to react to market changes. So again, it's just about having that full transparency, gaining their trust, letting them know that you're keeping a pulse on the market and then reacting accordingly. Now we're going to look at the average stay lengths. So length of stay, if for those unfamiliar, is determined by the total guest nights divided by guest arrivals. It's an important metric to understand how long the average guest is staying, and then allows you to determine if you should encourage longer stays to push occupancy and how the strategy differs from season to season. So right now what we're seeing is that guests are staying for slightly shorter stays than 2022 across the board. Stays have been shorter this year, but are getting even shorter for the second half of the year. I'm curious if that's what you guys are seeing as well. This slide specifically is just focusing on stay lengths in Q2. So guests are shifting from booking stays of 6 to 8 days to staying for just 3 to 5 days. This brings reservations down by 0.5%. Now the shift from right to left is very subtle, but something to be aware of as fewer reservations per property are coming in for those 3 to 5 day stay category. A likely cause for this is that guests are wanting to save money and book for 2 separate long weekends rather than one extended stay. So another thing too is city travel is also on the rise, and those stays are usually a weekend or a long weekend, not so much a week plus. So here are just some tips that I was able to gather from our revenue managers. Our partners have had success with including or with encouraging longer stays. So having a length of stay discount that you put in place, developing a gap night strategy so you're not leaving money on the table, and setting maybe some stay length minimums. But definitely be careful with those stay length minimums, as you don't want them to be too restrictive that you start to lose guest interest. So there's definitely a fine balance. Booking windows. So another KPI that we like to track. It's an important metric to measure, as it allows you to know how far in advance people are booking, and then provides insight into occupancy pacing and when you should advertise for certain seasonal peaks. The US had the longest booking window, with 2023 being slightly down to 2022. Breaking it down by month, each is pretty similar to the last, but then a couple instances of increases in June are starting to appear. We won't be able to fully understand these booking windows for summer till those last minute bookings come in, but overall the summer is pacing pretty similarly to last year. So looking at that pacing data for last year in your market is going to be pretty crucial as you start to plan for the rest of the summer months. In Q2, year over year, there's a shift out of those longer booking windows, which lies between 60 to 179 days, and into the shorter booking windows, which are 14 or fewer days. So important trends to note: guests that are booking 60 days in advance are likely looking for longer stay lengths, larger homes, and will drive more revenue as they're booking earlier in that booking window at those higher ADRs that property managers are setting. Bookings within a 30-day window are usually lower ADRs, as property managers drop rates to capture those necessary bookings to fill that occupancy. So again, trends that you probably are aware of, but it's good to note that this isn't just happening in your market, it's happening across the US. So responding to booking window shifts, needless to say, it's important to encourage those longer booking windows. And one way to do so is by offering rate discounts and developing your strategy early. Tracking your occupancy pickup is also key and will be helpful in understanding forward-looking pacing data. And I believe this is our last KPI, is booking source. So utilizing all booking channels is super important. So that's Airbnb, Vrbo, Booking.com, and Direct. Not just simply utilizing them, but also understanding the strengths and weaknesses of each. For instance, Airbnb and Booking.com have more market share, but direct bookings bring in a majority of revenue. They are great options for last-minute bookings and capturing those last-minute guests. Vrbo, though, is still relevant, but has less market share and revenue each year. This also drastically differs by market. So understanding, again, your supply and booking channels is going to be key. One thing, let's see, I got one more thing I'm trying to remember on Direct. Yeah, so Direct and Vrbo, they do tend to have those longer stay lengths and book further out. So if you lean on those channels to find guests who like to plan well in advance, Direct and Vrbo is going to be your channels. And again, Airbnb and Booking.com have lower ADRs and book closer to arrival. So these channels can help fill in occupancy holes, as well as find guests who have the ability to be flexible. So going back to my original statement, not just using Airbnb or just using Vrbo. If you really want to maximize and fill your occupancy, understand those strengths and weaknesses within your market on each booking channel, and then plug and play where it works the best. Somehow we've already reached the conclusion. So what tools should you be using on a weekly basis? Whether it's Key Data, or if you have these tools in Hospitable or you're using something else, pacing reports are going to be key. So pacing reports allow you to analyze your performance against last year, narrowing your focus to track the top KPIs or metrics that mean the most to your business at that given time. So whether it's length of stay, booking windows, occupancy, ADR, RevPAR, make sure you're using those pacing reports to be able to keep track day to day, week to week, month to month, and year over year. Second, benchmarking allows you to see how your property or portfolio of properties, so either if you manage one home, if you manage several, you want to see how they're pacing against market trends. It allows you to assess opportunities and then also understand weaknesses where you can capitalize. Lastly, tracking and understanding your booking curve will also allow you to fine-tune marketing strategies and create a competitive pricing strategy. Now, when I say creating marketing strategies, that does not mean you need a 10-person team running your marketing. That can be those of you that's just managing between 1 to 5 homes. It's just being more strategic with the data you have available to you and then making those strategies accordingly. Very quickly, these are some reports we have in the Key Data dashboard. These are the ones that our partners utilize. So this includes those homeowner reports we discussed earlier. You can also create custom dashboards. So everything we talked about, you can narrow in and create a dashboard on a specific market. You can track the performance of certain properties with the leaderboard, and we allow you to compare different segments within your inventory versus the market. So you can have it all on one screen, making it a much more time-consuming or time-saving process, giving you time back in your day to do other things that are demanding in your business. So, very last thing, key points to remember as we leave today. RevPAR is very strategic and an important measure or unit of measure in the short-term rental industry, and it'll help you find that sweet spot between occupancy and rate. Understanding the supply and demand growth in your market will also help you determine market occupancy. 3, having a better grasp on your property's performance using real-time data will provide meaningful insights to help you develop your strategy before it's too late. And then last, creating and utilizing custom dashboards on a daily basis will allow you to see the information you need quickly, giving you that time back to your day to focus on other parts of your business, or go hang with your kids, go have fun, live your life. We're all here, work to live, don't live to work. So that's the whole point. But yeah, I hope this data was helpful. I'm happy to answer some questions and we can go back and touch on anything else. I know Miles is going to take it away, but this is my email if you guys have questions. I am not a revenue manager, but I know several that work for Key Data. So if you have questions that I cannot answer, I can either one, entertain you and make up a really bad answer that will not be helpful, or email me. I'm happy to connect you with an expert.
Sounds good. So yeah, Q&A, but with an asterisk there.
Yes.
That sounds awesome. Yeah, feel free to ask us questions in Q&A, folks, or in the chat. We're happy to take questions there. And also, if you want to click the React button, under there is a raised hand function. If you want to come on stage, you can do so and ask a question live as well if it's easier to ask in that way. Lots of people saying thank you as well, Tabitha, for an excellent presentation. I think everyone enjoyed that. It's very helpful.
You're very welcome. Thank you, guys.
Sweet. Stephanie did ask a question. I know the answer to it, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Is Key Data integrated with Hospitable?
Yes, we are. Very much so. That's why I'm here.
Exactly, yeah. So Key Data have actually been integrated with us for a while. We only found out like a few weeks ago. We didn't realize. People are always building integrations with us, and we don't realize.
When I was telling Miles before we all got on here, my goal is to do more and more of these. So if you guys have any input on more data you want to see, something that would be more helpful, narrowing in on specific markets, I am happy to pitch that and we can come back and figure something out.
For sure, yeah. So if there's anyone in the audience that's like, "Oh man, why didn't you cover, such and such place specifically?" That'd be great to let us know. I know we had at least one host in the chat that has properties in Hawaii, so I'm very interested in hearing how their properties are performing this year.
Yeah, I'm curious too.
Yeah, I can't remember who that was, but please let us know if you're still here, folks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got a great expert in Hawaii who's got really insightful information. So if you are the one from Hawaii, let me know. I'll connect you.
Nice. Krista was asking about the integration as well. So, was it Krista? There's so many messages I can't keep up. So, people asking how do they see the Key Data dashboard in Hospitable? To be clear, it's not integrated in a sense that you can see the data inside Hospitable. The integration means that your Hospitable data is pushed to Key Data, if I understand that correctly, Tabitha.
Yeah, so what we have is we have an API key. So we connect with Hospitable so that all of your data flows right from Hospitable into the Key Data dashboard. So in that first few slides, when I was talking about direct data versus scrape data, we 100% provide both. But what's so powerful about direct source data is any of you that's connected with a property management system and also uses key data, we can filter out those owner stays and maintenance holds. So when you're basing your rates on the neighbor next door who you're competing for guest check-ins with, if they have, all of 4th of July week blocked off and it
Mm.
just shows on Airbnb or Vrbo that they booked it at 500 a night, you might think like, well, what am I doing wrong? Or can I up my prices? But in reality, the family who owns that home is staying there. So you're basing your decisions off of what is quite frankly false data. So direct source data really helps you navigate that landscape. But in order to do that, we need to integrate. So, like Miles said, we're integrated, but I mean, full transparency, you got to pay for it. So it's all very reasonable. We're definitely anybody, from this webinar who wants to learn more. I will do a demo of the dashboard with you, and there's definitely going to be discounts in there. But we make it reasonable for, smaller teams all the way up to bigger teams. It's made for everybody. So yeah,
So
you got my email. Send me an email.
yeah, I'm
I'm
gonna
happy
say you've got
to
some takers.
help.
Copy down her email now, and we can include the email on our email when we send out the recording too, to make sure
Yeah.
that gets seen. Um, I see a hand. Oh, the hand's gone down. So Sean had a question. Is there a way to track saturation of market? For example, how many properties were added to Key West last year, as an example?
Yeah, so we can track all of that data. So we call it OTA supply. So it's a whole report where we can show you the number of STRs in the market this year versus last year, how many are on each of the booking channels, and then also what the most looked for amenities are, unit type, unit location. So we can really dig down and find all that information. So short answer, yes, we can.
Fair, that's fair. Um, this is a this is a tough one, and I'm not going to hold you to giving a definite answer here. But MC asked, if you were going to invest in the short-term rental market, where would you invest in the next few months?
Oh my God. I feel like Florida, everything in Florida is just blowing up. And I think that's been the case. I feel like that's just the short-term rental hub. Um, that's a really hard question. There's definitely some hot spots out there. And of course, right now I'm drawing a blank on where they are, but Florida just keeps coming up. So
Sweet
I
disclaimer: this is not investment advice, of course. This
this is
just
not investment advice. Do not listen to me for don't do any course of action based off of my recommendations. I will connect you to a revenue manager. This is just what I've heard.
sweet, sensible. Cool, awesome. Couple more questions in the Q&A. So Alexander asked, can you talk about RevPAR a bit more and why it's such an important metric?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to send me an email, I'm going to send you so many more resources about RevPAR because it can be a really confusing metric and it helps when you have concrete examples. So RevPAR, it is, again, you're using occupancy and ADR to make sure that you're capturing rates at a sustainable level. So where you're not just trying to get basically like the highest ADR week after week, if you can kind of just like spread that out throughout a calendar month. So as one of our revenue managers says, like imagine you have a calendar and you have peanut butter and you just want to smear the peanut butter across all 30 days in that month. Having almost a lower ADR but more bookings is going to be more profitable than jacking up those rates and capturing less bookings. So RevPAR tells you that balance. So that's why it's so important. But again, that is a very base level explanation. So I definitely please email me so I can send you more resources and connect you with somebody who can kind of maybe dive into your inventory a little bit more in your market and help you understand it better.
Sweet, that sounds good. Awesome. So Gail asked, and there was, so direct showed up on one of your reports. I can't remember which slide it was. And as a share of revenue, it looked pretty good, kind of thing versus Airbnb. I think we just wanted some clarification. When you said direct, it means kind of your direct booking website, right? So your own website. Awesome.
Yep,
Cool.
exactly. And we have a tool as well called Demand IQ that will be able to dig deeper into the demand that's coming through your website. So that's always an option as well. But overall, understanding those direct bookings will be key.
Great. Sounds good. Okay, I'm gonna keep them coming thick and fast. I hope you don't
Yeah,
mind.
go for it.
So Kevin asked a great question. You've teased a discount, so now that people want to know, how much does a subscription cost? Maybe give us a starting price and what kind of
Yeah.
discount do hospitable users get?
Totally. So I have to negotiate that discount because if it was up to me, everything would be free. And my boss will probably kill me if he's watching this. We start at 100 a month. So it's 100 a month, and that includes 25 plus reports. And it includes a revenue manager. So we have a whole team, our partner success team, that's made up of revenue managers that have worked in the short-term rental market for years. And then they join Key Data, learned the platform, and they work with property managers like yourself to better understand your market, know how to utilize the Key Data dashboard so that you're not just paying for a new thing in your tech stack, but not fully understanding how to use it. That's not our goal. We want you to use it better because the more data, the better for all of us. It's kind of like a co-op in that way. So starts at 100 a month. But again, I am working on that discount. I just don't know that number, and I don't want to get fired because I already gave away too much information. So,
All good, all good. Sounds good. Okay, so Natasha asked, um, is it possible to kind of get data on direct competitors, or is this kind of just general market data as a whole? Can we really drill down into our neighbors and how their SDR is performing?
totally. So that's another report called what is it? OTA comp sets. So where we show a map of all your competitors. So you can do this based on a market, or you can zoom in on one of your properties and look at all the short-term rentals within that neighborhood or even wider. So you can go between, like 1 mile up to 50 miles, and then you can see each of those properties, click them, add them into your comp set, and that can be as small or as big as you'd like. And then you can see who's booked out on what days, at what ADR they locked in at, and then also what occupancy they're filling. So that's actually probably one of our most popular reports. So it's OTA comp sets. Again, if you email me and that's one that you're interested in, we can definitely go over that.
Sweet. Awesome. Thank you.
Mhm.
And then again, I don't know if you're going to want to answer these questions, more market advice. So Austin asked, it seems to be getting more and more competitive. Is it a good time to sell? I think it's very difficult to answer that directly, but is it getting more and more competitive, Tabitha?
100%. Yeah, I'm not going to say you should or shouldn't sell, but is it getting more competitive? Absolutely. So I think we saw it post COVID, 2020 was, we're just going to forget about that year. 2021, everybody was mostly out of lockdown and traveling a ton. A lot of people decided to list their second home as an STR. So we saw that all across the board. I mean, outside the US too. And so if you think about it, the market got super saturated all over the place. And so when guests are looking, they have far more options. So now it's coming down to you really have to refine your strategy, because 21 and 22, those were unicorn years. So now you kind of have to go back to what you were doing in 2019 if you were in the business then. And that means really keeping an eye on market trends, keeping an eye on your competition, understanding your inventory. What are your strengths and what are your weaknesses, and being honest about that. Because not every property you own is going to be the top one in the market. And that's not a bad thing at all. It's again being honest and knowing who your demographic is and how you can market to them. So going back to like those marketing channels. I just talked to somebody the other day who's in Tahoe, and he was really worried. He didn't understand why he wasn't having any bookings. And it's because he only listed on Airbnb. And I showed him the OTA supply map, and I was like, well, 90% of the bookings are coming through Vrbo. So you might also want to list on Vrbo. So
Mm.
again, what worked in 21 and 22 might not be the best years to really bank your decision making on. It's looking at that real-time data.
Sweet, that makes sense. Um, and then just kind of taking a look at medium-term rentals. Someone again asking for the best place for medium-term rentals. I'm not going to make you answer that question again, but
Yeah.
how are things looking for midterm versus short-term rentals? Are we seeing similar dynamics, or are there big differences there?
Truthfully, we work with less 30 plus day stays. So I currently have a client, for instance, up in Washington area. And that's the only one I work with. We're really try to stay with short-term rentals. So I have seen it pop up more and more, absolutely. But I can't say it's saturating the market or anything. But yeah, I don't have enough helpful information to answer that question and give more.
Fair enough. I appreciate the honesty. I'm sure our
Yeah.
audience does too. We don't want to just making up answers on spot.
I would love to make up answers, but thank you guys.
Cool. We'll see straight through it. Emmanuel asks, what's the difference between key data and AirDNA, for
Yeah,
example?
I'm asked this all of the time. So the biggest difference is how we take our data in. So again, that direct data versus scrape data. We distinguish between revenue generating nights and non-revenue generating nights. A lot of their data is focused on market data, where we take so much more than that. That's just one section of our business. We're a complete revenue management tool. So we have a whole portion of the dashboard that is dedicated to your internal pacing charts. So looking week to week, month to month, year over year with all your historical data, and then looking at forward-looking trends. And then you move down, and then you can look property by property and then market by market. So we get even more granular there. And then you move even further down, and we've got maybe like 6+ reports all on your booking curve, booking windows, arrival dates, heat maps for your guests, feeder markets, marketing sources. So when we get into marketing, so whether it's C-level, if you're running it all and wearing multiple hats, for your marketing team, your reservationist, your finance team, everybody can use it. So it's not just market related. We also do all of our scraping from Airbnb and Vrbo in-house. So all of our engineers are in-house. We were created by property managers for property managers. Let me think. There's a few others in there, but it's more the accuracy of the data is really what it comes down to. And a key tool that you'll see with us that you won't see with anybody else is that because of our API integration with your property management system, we can directly benchmark your property against the market. So if you just scroll down, you choose one of your properties, and then if it's a 4-bedroom house with a private pool, and make sure it's only comparing your 4-bedroom house with a private pool to other 4-bedroom houses with a private pool. So you can truly compare apples to apples and know that the data you're utilizing is accurate. So those are just a few of the reasons, but I'm sure there's several more I'm forgetting that, again, email me. I can send you so much more.
Yeah, sweet. I encourage everyone to drop her an email and get on one of those demos as well and kind of really see the platform for yourself.
Yeah.
It's quite impressive. Cool. A couple of questions in Q&A. So Jonathan was asking, how does the data look for main market cities like Boston that have short-term rental regulations where they are artificially lowering supply? Are we seeing any kind of different dynamics there at all?
Let's see. Can you say that one more time? I think I missed the last part.
So, cities where there's enforcement of short-term rental regulations, where they're artificially lowering supply, how does the data look? Are we seeing kind of a big impact there?
Okay, in Boston, that's a territory I don't cover. So again,
Okay.
email me. I'll connect you with who is in that market. I want them to give you accurate information, but we've been very steadily keeping an eye on those regulations. Like I specifically work with, a lot of people in Napa and Sonoma County and dealing with those regulations. So yeah, the supply count, I would assume has cut down, but to what extent, I'm not sure.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Okay, a bit more on key data itself. The revenue manager aspect. How exactly can the revenue manager help? Obviously you mentioned as part of subscription, you have access to a revenue manager. How do they kind of help?
Absolutely. So I love our partner success team. They're the most wonderful people you'll ever meet. And basically, how you can think of them, it's a revenue manager and consultant that you don't need to pay a salary for. So if you think about that 100 a month, that includes all those reports and that revenue manager. So what they would do is once you're integrated with us, you'll go through that onboarding process. So where you meet them, you discuss your goals, you tell them about your inventory, where you're located, which I would also pass all that information off to them, but they definitely want to have that intro conversation with you. And then they'll start going, like I said, over your goals. So if your goals is to better understand your booking channels, they're going to bring you into that report that will show you the demand from your direct bookings, Vrbo, Airbnb, and then point you in a few other reports that are going to directly help you reach your goal. So that goal is probably going to change season to season as well. So you can check in with that partner success manager as little or as often as you'd like. So we really have a spectrum of what that looks like with our current partners. We have some partners who want to meet with their PSM every 2 weeks. We have others who have been with us for over 4 years and say, we don't want to see you maybe once a month just to say hi because they've got it down. We've trained them to the point where they're so self-sufficient within the dashboard that they don't need that additional support. And that's the ultimate goal. But what we hated seeing, while we were creating key data was because again, we've all come from property management business prior, is when you bring on something new in your tech stack and you don't know how to use it and you can't get that level of support. So we figured if we have a partner success team who's dedicated to each of you, then you're getting that level of support. You're trusting the data more, not just because one, it is the most accurate you can find, but also you have somebody who can walk you through what it means. Because this industry has way too many key performance indicators to keep track of. So like if you didn't know what RevPAR is, it's a key metric that you need to track. So having somebody explain that to you is going to be super vital for your success, especially as we've already confirmed, it is getting more and more competitive.
Oh, awesome. So I had to mute there because my dog was barking in the background.
Okay.
Cool. Plenty more questions coming in. So a bit more on kind of key data versus AirDNA and the service as a whole. So first off, John's question on, is there a minimum amount of months that we need to subscribe for to key data? I mean,
Yeah. So for key data, if you have more than 25 property, let's see, what is it? I'll have to double check because I think we are still month to month, but I'm not quite sure. So that's another one I'll have to get back to you on because I was about to answer, but I was like, I think that might be outdated. So I'm pretty sure it's month to month, but I will double check.
fair enough. And then in terms of accurate count of number of listings in a given city compared to AirDNA, is key data more accurate without counting duplicates?
100%. I can
Like,
very confidently say that. Yeah, our engineering team works around the clock. There was, yeah, I'm trying to see what I can and can't say, to be honest. Yes, it's more accurate. Email me. I can explain kind of what's been happening in the market. But again, the fact that we use direct source data and we have internal scraping teams, that makes a world of a difference because it's people who are actually in the US on the ground making sure that nothing is duplicated, there's no discrepancies. That's our sole goal. So we didn't turn to direct source data until that scrape data was finalized and perfected.
sweet. Sounds good. Um, ooh, there was a good question there, and I've lost. Oh, is there so data? Whereabouts do you have data for? Do you have data for Canada as well? The specific question
Yeah.
is, but maybe you can enlighten us on other countries as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're all over the place. Actually, a majority of my clients are in Australia. We have tons of clients throughout Canada. We're in Europe. We're down South America. So we're all over. So to turn on direct source data, we need more than 4 property managers in that market utilizing key data. But in markets where we don't necessarily have that yet, even though we do in the top short-term rental markets, we do have scrape data. So it's pretty easy for our data team to map out new territories if that market is not already covered. But again, we've been around for quite a few years now. So we've got almost, everywhere where there is a short-term rental demand, we've got data for.
Sweet, sounds good. And then because people love asking you tough questions about specific cities, and I love putting them to you as well. So what would you say are some of the top cash flowing cities in the USA currently?
Oh God, I'm gonna write that question down. I don't know. I have no idea.
It's
But this is
it's
would
come
be
from someone
interesting to
that's
know.
emailing you, to be fair. So
Okay, email me. I will find out.
there you go. And then any insight on San Diego? So the question from Stephanie is, City of San Diego started its short-term rental regulation 1st of May 2023, issuing 5,000 licenses, but the supply has not gone down. According to AirDNA, showing 18,000 listings. Any insights on that? It's another tough
That's
one.
a great question. I work with San Diego
Mhm.
partners too. I don't know our direct listing count right off the top of my head, but
Mhm.
again, now I see it in the text. Stephanie, email me. Let's look at that data. Because yeah, again, I don't know off the top of my head, but that's definitely information we have. So let's try to find that.
Sounds good. You're going to be bombarded with emails this
Oh,
evening.
I've been watching
Just be
it
aware.
climb. I'm up to
Good,
12
good.
now. We're good. I knew what I was signing up for.
Sweet. Awesome. Cool. Any more questions, folks? We currently don't have any unanswered. Right. Oh, we're doing a great job. I mean, you are. I'm just reeling them off. It's very easy for me.
And great moderating it.
Uh, cool. Nice. Yeah. Just everyone saying you're doing such a great job, to roast.
Thank you
So
guys.
we'll hang around for a minute or two longer in case any questions do come up. Otherwise, we might just
Absolutely.
end it a little short.
Sounds great. Yeah, like again,
So yes,
go
sorry,
ahead.
Rob.
Oh no, I was just gonna reiterate. I mean, if I would love to hear if this was helpful, if it brought up some
Mhm.
insights that you weren't aware of, please even just like feedback, email it to me. Yeah, we'll send out a copy of the presentation, everything. But I want to know what's helpful, what wasn't
Yeah.
as helpful, positive and negative, because again, would love to do this again, but want to cater it to Hospitable's demographic. And since it's like our first time doing this, definitely want your feedback, but yeah, thank you guys. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I can definitely see us doing this as like a quarterly thing or something like that, guys. So like if there's anything that we've missed out, anything where you really want us to deep dive a bit more in certain regions, yeah, please let us know. And if you're watching on YouTube, we see you. Please let us know in the comments as well. We'll take note of those and we'll feed those back to Key Data as well, so they know. Sweet. Okay. I think we might end it there. The comments and positive sentiments keeps coming in, but no more questions. I think we can call it a day, Tabitha.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. Have a great weekend.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And thank you everyone for joining. We hope you've enjoyed it. Like I say, let us know in the comments if you want to see anything else in future. Thank you everyone for joining us.
All right. See you
Cheers.
guys.